Welcome back to another half hour, another exciting half hour.
Another exciting half hour. Hello, Flashman.
Another exciting half hour of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm still Robert Winters, and this guy here is still Patrick Barrett.
Or not Judy, depending on
Or not
who you
Judy
talk to.
Nichols, yeah. So, anyway, we spent much of the last half hour speaking.
This half hour,
generally.
we badmouth the candidates.
No, we don't. No. What we do is, what I will probably find myself doing, I have to sort of debate this, because I always try to take, like, historically, a bit of a hands-off bit about the candidates. I don't endorse anybody. But, you know, I don't want to shut up this year. I want to speak a little more freely.
Okay,
And that's
as you should.
Right, and that's not the same as saying, vote for this person, don't vote for that person, whatever. It's more like saying, here's the qualities that I see in this person. Here's.
Let me explain to you how Robert Winters should get your #1 vote.
Yeah, that'll be the day, right? Yeah.
Well, I know my bumper sticker says something about that.
By the time, when I go to the count, when they do the election count, Tuesday night they do just the ones that were readable by the scanners, and they pitch the write-in votes until the following day. So when they actually go through the write-ins, I actually do get a few votes. I mean, I think people just sort of like, they're trying to like telegraph a little, hey, how you doing, buddy? And they use their ballot to do it, right? Well, I mean, when you have...
That's a nice nod.
Well, when you've got transferable votes, you could give, you absolutely could. I don't recommend this, by the way, but you could give your #1 vote to your friend. Yeah. Write it in, and then just give your #2 to the person who you really hope it goes to. And after the first round, when the write-ins are all pitched, your ballot will in fact transfer to the person who
has
you
the
want.
same effect of writing in Bernie in the general election.
Yeah.
Too soon, or
don't be wouldn't be surprised if there were a few Bernie Sanders ballots written on the ballot here. By the way, I'm going to tell you, a good friend of mine, my friend David, who lives in Vermont. Okay. Right, he was, and he and I were actually instrumental in pushing to get the computerization of the Cambridge elections, back in the early and mid 90s, and he went on to a nice illustrious career in international diplomacy and I don't know, whatever.
As one does in Vermont.
Right, but he's living in Vermont now, and he was actually, this was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, he was actually going for a run. Okay. Right, and he was running around some place in some wooded area. And he's running, and guess who he runs into? Who's walking by himself in the woods in Vermont? Nope. Bernie Sanders.
Oh my God, Bernie Sanders.
Right? He's just there contemplating his navel or something, going for a walk. And, he says, hello, Senator, and he keeps running, right? And then he comes running around, because he's running. Sanders is walking. He runs, and he comes right past him, and he's coming up from behind him. And you know what you say when you're about to pass somebody, either on a bike or whatever, you say
left, right.
Right, so he actually says to Bernie Sanders, he says, on your left, Senator. And then as he passes him, he says, bet you don't hear that very often. True story, actually. Made me actually feel a little sympathy for Sanders, because Sanders laughed, because he thought it was hysterically funny. So, anyway, true story. Anyway, back to the locals.
Yes, come on.
All right, so I thought what we do is we could take a look at the snapshot of the current list of probable city council candidates. If we have time, we could look at school committee as well, I suppose. But, and just to sort of walk through a little bit here. This is not like endorsement or anything, just sort of looking at who these people, well, you could.
Can we make some predictions?
That's not, Too soon. And the truth is that it's still May. Yeah. As we said in the last half hour, there are no candidates until people file nominations and they get certified, and then even then they have until like mid-August to pull out if they want to pull out, right? So the ballot is not actually set in stone until mid-August.
Pressure in the camera if the media gets too much.
Right, and the municipal election calendar has been established, been voted now by the Cambridge Election Commission, so it is absolutely set. So I have it up on the Cambridge candidate pages. You can read it if you want. So anyway, I thought we'd do is just sort of walk through here. There are a few, what we like to, sorry to say it, but fringy candidates who are kind of perennial candidates who no doubt will probably be added to the list. I haven't put them on the candidate pages yet, but some of them will probably jump in. And maybe some of the candidates who not pull papers, but they've filed with the state, may actually quit and decide not to go through with it. After all, if you've got 9 people to be elected and you've got 20 some odd candidates, and you start to see certain candidates are the more dominant ones, there might come a point where you have to say to yourself, what am I really going to get out of this?
My guess is that on the list of new people that I've seen that I haven't seen any of them at city council at all. So I think once they actually go to a city council meeting, they'll say, "Oh,
Do I really want
this
to
is
do
what this is."
Right.
No thanks.
But I thought I was going to solve the find Middle East peace.
They're talking about curb cuts.
What's going
I don't
on
wanna
here?
do that.
Yeah. So, the actual job maybe is a little less glamorous, but it's what people do.
I have to say, anyone who can survive public comment is, in my opinion, just a champ.
See, I could, if I was elected city council, I could survive public comment very easily. The
Texas?
reason is that I would ignore it. But it is funny. There are some city councilors who sit
It's gonna be
there.
hard to mold that into a slogan.
Yeah, some of them just sort of sit there like they're very studious. Oh, I'm really
They're playing
taking it
Tetris.
seriously. Yeah. It gets probably
They're shopping on Amazon.
All right. Anyway, without any further ado, assuming the machinery works well here,
Okay.
we're just going to take a little romp through here.
Let's romp.
Right? Maybe make a comment on who we think maybe kind of strong candidates, viable candidates, people who are probably going to be really in the running.
In fairness, and because it is, very far away, a lot of these candidates don't have much information about themselves. So
That's right. Yeah.
it's hard to say one way or the other than the fact that they might look good in a tie.
Right. Now, some of these candidates I really know, and some of them I really don't know.
Yep.
And we'll just say that. So anyway, we're going to sort of walk through here. I hope I just pressed the wrong button here. Here we go. There we go.
Ah,
All right. Now I hope these images are big enough here, so that I always make my candidate pages appropriately sized so that they'll work well even on an iPhone, right, as well as on a big website or whatever. So we're just going to walk through here, not spend a lot of time on everybody. So we got Ron Benjamin, and Patrick, feel free to jump in here.
yeah, Ron. I don't know much about Ron, although I do think he looks great in a tie.
Right.
So I hope to hear more about him in the future, but it's hard to say much without
Right. He was actually on this program at one point. He's a nice guy. Seems to have some support in one of the local churches, but he's raised no money, and he's spending no money. And not that money is what drives everything, but it certainly is an indicator of a serious candidacy. If you're not raising or spending any money at all, that suggests to me that you basically just sort of be going through the motions.
Yeah,
So,
well, maybe it's
so we'll see.
a dip in the toe in the water.
Right. So some things may change over time. Now, Denis Benson, who is was an incumbent, he was served in the previous term, but was not reelected.
And in his spare time has opened up a fantastic restaurant, La Fabrica, which is in Central Square.
Right. So he has an interest in that. I don't know what his exact role is. He's either a part owner or.
I think he's a part owner, and I
Right.
think he helped. Actually, he's a contractor, so I know he's done some of the build inside.
Oh, great. So so he's sort of active in that, and now, so there is some speculation. He did float. He put a Facebook posting and as well as actually a letter in the Cambridge Chronicle saying how much he was considering running for election. But he has raised no money
Yep.
and spent no money, which if money talks, it suggests strongly to me that he's probably not going to run. Now, the exit of current councillor Nadia Okimoto from the mix.
Well, they were good friends in the council when they were together there, so I think that might be a deterrent for him, if anything.
Well, the point is that if there is an additional vacancy, that does change the political calculus about whether you want to actually run or not. So,
well, without saying too much of anything, I think there's probably more than just 2 vacancies on the council that some people don't know yet.
right. So there's definitely a possibility that there could be another vacancy, or it could happen because there's a lot more fluidity in the ballots when you have multiple vacancies, that it's possible that an incumbent might be defeated.
Yep.
And there's a bit of a history of that. So you will have at least 2 new people on the council, but you don't know if it's going to be more. It could be more.
My prediction's you're going to have 4 new people on the council. Saying it right now.
It could happen. All right, we're not taking wages here, buddy. All right. Now, Denis Carlone,
Yep.
who's now served for 2 terms,
Mhm.
right? My personal sense, he's a strong candidate who has a political base that's largely, it's not citywide. I think it tends to be in some of the more tonier wards. He's got an Avon Hill address.
Yep.
I always felt that maybe the kind of person who might have voted for either a Kathy Bourne or a Frank Duhay in years gone by might find the professional credentials of a Denis Carlone to be attractive, right?
Perhaps.
Yeah. Now, again, his numbers were down in the last election, but part of that was because Mike Connolly was on the ballot.
Yeah, I think this is why his transfer votes from Mike took him over the top. I think if you look at those number one votes that he got, he was probably in the number 4 or 5 total votes if you took Mike's number ones and threw them in there.
Right.
So.
Right. So now the thing is, so you might think, okay, Connolly's not running for a city council seat, so maybe those votes are available for Carlone. But we'll talk about that when we get to Quentin Zondervan, who I think is very much appealing to those very same voters as Mike Connolly, and might even have the support of Mike Connolly. I was sort of looking at the people who's writing checks to whom and whatever,
Right.
and many of the same people who are writing checks to Connolly are writing checks to Zondervan. So that may not be, those ballots may not be available for Denis Carlone. There's also a phenomenon of Glenn Kuchar, he's called the pretty new face, which is that if somebody's not
Quentin
winning,
is very pretty. I'll have to say that.
well, it doesn't literally mean pretty. It means just somebody who's an attractive new candidate,
Sure.
and sometimes an incumbent has a harder time wrestling those votes when there's an attractive new candidate.
I mean, and I have to say, and Denis Carlone and I have bumped horns 1,000 times, but he's been extremely reasonable as of late, which I think.
Actually, I would say that at the city council meeting last night, he was like the smartest guy in the room. You know, the other people were fighting back and
Well,
forth.
I'm not sure that's what riles his base. So, Denis, amp up the crazy if you're listening.
You know, honestly, before he kind of like got a little associated with some of the crazies, not naming names here, but he actually had a pretty good reputation as a accomplished architect. Well, I guess we could sort of say more of an urban planning kind of guy. Did a lot of work for the city, and you know, honestly, if he plays into that card, if he plays that card of his professional credentials and really just comes across as credible, I think that actually is what benefits him the most politically. But that's my read of it. Okay. Leland Chung is, you know, has been a straight. He had a big drop in his vote total in the last election.
Yes, he did.
What does that mean in terms of this election? I don't know. You know, he hasn't raised any money. Hasn't really spent any money. But then on the other hand, he's got a huge amount of money in his campaign account because of the fact that he ran for a lieutenant governor and then in a state senate race. Yep. Of course, a lot of that money also was money that he loaned to his campaign. So that may not be something he wants to spend. He might want to get it back one day, right? So, you know, all indications so far, he will seek re-election. But again, there is this fact that if somebody's not raising or spending money, who knows? Who knows?
Well, in Leland's case, he has a pretty big war chest, so maybe he feels like he doesn't necessarily need to. Right. But also with a candidate who has seemingly lost a little bit of momentum, he might be rethinking his strategy.
He could be. I think I would make the case that some of Nadim Mazin's votes who are appealing to sort of the young techie crowd were some of the very same people who might have looked to Leland in previous elections. So Mazin's out. Maybe Leland could ask us for some of those back. Next one in line here is Olivia D'Ambrosia, who I've never met.
So I also have never met her.
So I can't really say much about her.
I went to her website, and it looked like she's involved in theater or dance of some kind.
Yeah, there was at least one play they did at the Central Square Theater that she wrote. And she... In
fact, her picture here looks like a headshot more than a candid...
Right, actually it is, because I stole it from her as a headshot from her, you know, either her yoga or her theater page.
Gotcha.
Right, so that's why it looks the way it does. So we'll see, you know, when they all really come out more publicly. But she's a candidate. She's been spending money, you know, and we'll see how it goes. Now, Jan Devereaux, my sense is she's an incumbent now, one term, right? This is her first term. I think she's doing all of the politics very well.
Absolutely.
And I think she stands to have do pretty well in this election.
J-Devs has been, if anything, she's been consistent. And she's one who does her homework. She reads up on things. I may not agree with her on a lot of things we talk about, but you know, for her, if you were a J-Devs voter before, you're going to continue to be a J-Devs voter now.
Right. Just want to remind people we're actually still here, but let's go back to the table. Right. So, and I just think just from the way you play politics, the issues you choose to target voters, to build, to solidify your political base geographically and otherwise. She's doing everything right.
Yeah.
Right? So again, and
She's monopolized the color orange.
Right. I disagree with her on plenty of things, but I think she's playing her politics very, very well. Sam Gibbrew is a brand new candidate, but he's definitely a guy who's lived in Cambridge for a very long time. I don't know if he was born here.
I believe he was.
Was?
Well, I spoke with him a little while ago, and he seems extremely energetic. He told me, born and bred in Cambridge, or maybe he had moved to Cambridge he was very, very young. I think maybe he moved here when he was 3.
Right. He has there is a curiosity of Sam as a candidate, which is he's actually raised a lot of money, but he's already spent a lot of money. So, he seems to like to raise it and spend it.
You have to wonder what he's spending his money on at this point.
Right. Well, yeah, maybe. But now there are some other candidates who've actually
I'm a fiscal conservative, Sam, if you're listening.
Right. There are numerous candidates who've actually raised considerable money. I'll mention some of them shortly, who actually still have a really, really substantial campaign war chest, to really wage a pretty strong campaign. All right. So we'll see how it goes with Sam. You can speculate as to who he would draw votes from, right? As a person of color, there are voters who will vote based along racial lines, religious lines, geographical lines, issues, you name it. So the thing is, in a PR election, proportional representation election, it's not like you're just trying to be the most attractive candidate. You also have to be very aware of who you're drawing the votes from, right? So he might be competing with an incumbent, for example, and we'll see how it goes. Now, Craig Kelly, I think he's sort of a steady as she goes kind of candidate. He nurtures his voter base extremely well. He sends out frequent email messages that are actually very respectful of the points of view of his voters. And I think that's probably the number one reason why he manages to do pretty well, solidly well, without actually spending tons of money.
Yeah, I'm on a few of those email chains, and I always find them to be informative and very non-spam-like, and it's appreciated.
Right.
So he always sort of disseminates what's on the agenda. And I'm sure there's obviously lots of people who don't spend a second in city council. I just like to know what's going on.
Yeah, and I think he does a really good job.
I think he has to change that picture up now. I like to see a Craig Kelly with the full beard.
We got to go for that. Yeah. I mean, there are other candidates and incumbents who send out newsletters that are absolutely like cardboard, nothing. They just sort of like, look at me, I'm wonderful. I think Craig actually does it much, much better.
I think that was like my overarching issue with all the new candidates and some of the guys who are incumbents when they were new, is that the first thing they do is they put up that website, they put up the donate thing, and they tell me nothing about themselves.
That's right, yeah. So next one in the list here, because we want to make sure we get through everybody here, is Alana Malan.
Yep.
And Alana actually worked when David Marr was mayor in the mayor's office. She worked with Food for Free, I think, over on Inman. And she's, in my view, she's sort of cut to some degree from the same cloth as a Marjorie Decker, Mark Mcgovern, social, sort of benefactor kind of orientation, sort of doing the right thing. But from a political point of view, as a new candidate, she's also successfully raising a considerable amount of money. She's already raised over $22,000 and has about $18,000 plus to spend. And that's all pretty early in the game. So she absolutely has to be viewed as one of the more prominent, viable contenders in this election.
She also seems to be nice and human, which I like. And on her website, she listed Central Square as one of the top 3 issues, which obviously resonates with me.
That resonates with us here, right? Now, next is Mark Mcgovern, who's an incumbent vice mayor, whatever that means, right? You're still just a city councilor. It's just a title. It doesn't mean a whole lot, right?
I think he likes being called.
Everyone wants to be a vice mayor, right? And he's he's served 2 terms, I think, right? And I think he's working the angles politically really strong. He has a kickoff coming up, I guess, next week, and he's got the U.S. Representative Catherine.
And he has a Motor Healy as well.
Yeah, so he has a lot of heavy hitters backing him, and I think that could work well in terms of when people share their lists and bring their voters out to vote for a favored candidate. That could work well for him. But it's fair to say that some of the candidates, the newer candidates, may actually be appealing to some of the same voters. So he has to watch out, probably more than most of the other candidates, for intrusion from some of the new
Well, that's
candidates.
the thing about where his base is too. There's not nearly as many votes in this area as there are, say, like in West Cambridge or where JDEPS lives.
Yeah.
David
Yeah.
Marr country.
Yeah, lives in Ward 5. Ward 5 usually comes out in good numbers. So again, good idea is, basically secure your political base before you start picking the high-hanging fruit. The newest candidate in the mix is Adrienne Musgrave. Actually, it's Adrienne Bonebreaker Musgrave. Right? Very nice. Now, I've had email contact with her, but I haven't met her personally. I hope to meet with her pretty soon. I actually spoke with her mother some years ago, who was a reporter from Miami, in Miami, when there was a story involving a former Cambridge political person down in Miami. So there was kind of an interesting connection there.
She's the only one I know nothing about.
Right, I don't know enough about her yet, so not much to say about it, but she lives in 02140. Sometimes where you're coming from actually matters, because you can target a geographic part of the population rather than an issue. Next person is Nadia Okimoto, who is arguably the newest candidate in the sense that she just showed up in town recently. She's a freshman at Harvard, 19 years old. Apparently she's a real go-getter. Has organized sort of big campaigns elsewhere, but doesn't really have much in the way of Cambridge roots at all. But again, she may be one of those candidates who will use national scale issues as part of her appeal.
I'm not sure what she's got. Been here for 6 months. It's hard to say how you could even get a feel for the issues in Cambridge. I've been here for such a short time.
There is one theory people have said over the years, which is that if you were a candidate who came out of MIT or a candidate who came out of Harvard, and if you actually could successfully get everybody, who is a registered voter in Cambridge, who is affiliated with the university, to rally behind you, you could sort of be a dark horse candidate who actually could come out of nowhere and actually, get a seat on a council just on that, even without any real roots in the community. So anyway, I think that's a candidate we'll have to watch, to be sure. Now, Sumbul Siddiqui, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, is actually a product of Cambridge. She's lived here either her whole life or a very long part of her life, and lives down in the sort of the Wellington-Harrington part of town. She was actually known as an activist, I believe, during her times in high school. So she has a lot of strong connections locally, right? So I consider her, and she's raised a pretty significant amount of money.
How much?
She's now raised at last count, over almost $12,000.
All right.
So that's a good start for a new candidate. That makes her a very viable candidate, in my view. Next person on the list is Mayor Denis Simmons, who's been on the council now. I think she was first elected in 2001, but she was on the school committee for some years before that. Again, I'm sure people are going to be targeting her political base.
Of course.
But, but she's the mayor, and she has a lot of people who like her and respect her and always will. And hopefully that means number one votes for her. There's always that problem where the new candidates are trying to appeal. Oh, no, she's safe, they'll say, so you have to vote for me, the new person.
Well,
Nobody's safe.
I think you get nobody is safe. That's always true. But I think you do get a little bit of a bump being the mayor. But also, I think in the past 2 years, you look at her tenure as mayor, she's done a fantastic job.
She's great. She's a mediator. She's level-headed, and I think that's just something I think a lot of people are going to continue to respect. Now, Vatsidi Savanche, who I've met just once, she's raising a significant amount of money. So by that alone, she's raising about $16,000 so far. So that makes her viable. I don't know that she's well rooted in Cambridge. I don't really know a whole lot about her, but she's got good professional credentials. So I'm sure she will present herself very, very well as a candidate, kind of one of the new candidates. And remember, there are going to be a couple of vacancies, so she could slip in there. That's not out of the question.
One of these crazy people is going to be
Exactly. Now, Nathan Taylor Thompson he filed with the state. He's contributed $5 to open an account. He's now in the negative range. Honestly, I think I'm going to have to just subtract him from the gallery soon because I haven't heard a thing from him.
I haven't heard a thing
but,
from him. I know
you
nothing
know,
about
but
him.
he's in there.
Blank slate.
So the next person is Sean Tierney. Sean is basically a product of Cambridge. Lives in 02139 over on Prince Street here on Cambridgeport. I have to consider him a strong candidate.
Full disclosure, I went to law school with Sean.
There you go. So, and he works in housing at the state level. So in terms of professional credentials that are relevant to a city council candidacy, he's in great shape that way. He has not yet raised a ton of money, maybe 6,000 and some bucks. I'm sure a lot more money is going to come soon. Yeah. So let's move along quick here. So Paul Toner actually is, in my view, probably one of the strongest challengers now. He's actually raised a considerable amount of money, but we haven't seen the very latest finance report from him. But
he also needs a new picture. It looks like an insurance agent.
Right. Yeah, but he's raised now $25,000.
Oh my
so,
goodness.
In my view, he's probably the single most prominent new candidate. And he has a really good reputation during his time with as head of the Cambridge Teachers Union in the school. He's known as a real mediator, person who can sort of bring different groups together. So I think and his family is extraordinarily.
Have you seen the signs?
Deeply known. They're around. They're around. I haven't
they
seen
look
them.
eerily similar to somebody else's sign.
Right. Now Tim Toomey has not yet said whether he's running. I'm sort of inclined to think that he is, but we don't know for sure.
I'm not endorsing it. I hope he does.
Right. A lot of people feel that way. And then there's Quentin Zondervan, who we mentioned earlier, who I think is a very strong candidate.
He's very anti-environment, though.
Right. He's very issue-based, to be sure. I guess we'll sort of come back to this because we're almost out of time. Very issue-based. Energy, climate change is sort of his thing. He was the head of Green Cambridge. He's an issue-based.
I'm not sure if he has another thing. That's my only.
Well, he's going to try for a geographical base in East Cambridge, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're out of time.
Oh, man.
Time flies. So anyway, we'll see you another time on Cambridge Inside Out.